2 decades after its birth, Pokémon, the second best-selling video game franchise of all time, and the world's largest media franchise, continues to draw inspiration from an array of fossil animals. Pokémon originated in 1996 Japan. It's the brainchild of Game Freak's game designer Satoshi Tajiri, who, among other things, based the idea off of the popular pastime for children of collecting insects. This simple mechanic of catching and identifying little critters seemed like a fresh new idea for a video game. So, Satoshi Tajiri conceptualized it into little monsters the player can collect. In Japan, the insect collecting hobby is centered more around beetles, but this didn't stop the game from having a global appeal, as other nations likened the game to birding or herping. As a result of creating the game off a real-world concept regarding animals, many of the designs for the pocket monsters are based on real-world animals. There are armadillos, kangaroo rats, turtles, carp, crabs, and more. Among the monsters based on real-world animals, there's also a subset based on extinct animals. These are called fossil Pokémon. As their title suggests, you have to find their fossils to revive them Jurassic Park style.
You bred raptors.
Any paleontology enthusiast older than 10 and younger than 50 will likely be well aware of this, as it's been part of the game's narratives since the beginning. A wide variety of extinct creatures have been used as inspiration, from the beginning of complex life in the Cambrian to the extinction of the dinosaurs in the late Cretaceous. Anorith and Armaldo, Anomalocaris. The Cambrian period saw a mass diversification of life on a scale we have never witnessed. From simple, multicellular life without eyes, legs, or ears grew new armored, clawed organisms. Among them were the arthropods, invertebrates with segmented bodies, hard chitin armor on their outsides, and many limbs for swimming, grasping, and hunting. Anomalocaris was one of these proto-arthropods, with many fin-like lobes sprouting from its sides, 2 large compound eyes, and grasping arms sticking out of its head. Generation 3 introduced Anorith and Armaldo as the Pokémon counterpart to this anomalous shrimp. Just like the fossil organism, the Pokémon are marine and swim with wing-like lobes on the sides of their bodies. The arms at the front of the head are also used like the real-world critter, to apprehend their prey while their pineapple ring mouths do the dirty work. These arthropods are revived with the claw fossil, which looks like an arm from an Anomalocaris. Anomalocaris had been misidentified many times over the course of its discovery, since different parts of its body were made of different minerals. The arm fossils were thought to belong to a separate shrimp-like animal, and that's what is depicted in Pokemon's claw fossil. Anorith's morphology stays within the realm of Anomalocaris, but Armaldo obviously takes some artistic license to make it more kaiju-esque. Kabuto and Kabutops, trilobites, horseshoe crabs, and sea scorpions, oh my. Kabuto and Kabutops are the next fossil Pokémon. The real-world creatures they are based on also date back to the early Paleozoic, trilobites, horseshoe crabs, and eurypterids. The trilobites appeared during the Cambrian, around 500 to 480 million years ago, and survived for 250 million years as a group, before meeting their end in the Permian mass extinction, which also sunk the sea scorpions. In that extremely long period of time, trilobites adapted to a wide range of habitats and physiologies, producing many shapes and sizes, with 17,000 fossil species known from their entire evolutionary history. Kabuto is obviously more like trilobites than its evolution, Kabutops, but the game's lore suggests the little crabby Kabuto is still alive in present day. If this is the case, perhaps it's more kin to horseshoe crabs. These arthropods are also extremely old, though not as old as trilobites, appearing in the Ordovician period. Unlike the trilobites, horseshoe crabs have kept a generally similar appearance throughout their history. The name Kabuto is short for Kabutogani, which is the Japanese word for horseshoe crab, so there may be more weight to that inspiration. Although Kabutops looks like an anthropomorphized bent-over trilobite, the scythe-like forearms and spiny body are more like the Eurypterids, or sea scorpions. These arthropods were fresh and saltwater adapted swimming, scorpion, and horseshoe crab relatives, many of which used long grasping arms ending in raptorial claws and spikes to capture their prey. They originated in the Ordovician with many different shapes and sizes. The German Jacalopterus may very well be the largest arthropod to ever live, at 2.6 meters, or 8.5 feet in length. Lileep and Cradiliy, sea lilies. The period after the Cambrian, the Ordovician, saw diversification of new groups, one of which were the sea lilies. Known scientifically as crinoids, these usually sessile flower-like creatures are actually an animal, and closely related to starfish and sea urchins. Game Freak was clever. Instead of going with the obvious and famous dinosaurian representatives of the fossil record, they created fossil Pokemon based on crinoids, Lileep and Cradiliy. They were given the grass type, but the real versions were definitely more along the lines of a water type. Though many are immobile, anchoring their flowery heads to the sediment with a long stalk and root-like system, some have adapted to paddle through the water column like a perpetual motion machine. These are the feather stars. They're some of the few groups to originate this early on and survive to the present day. Omanyte and Omastar, Ammonites. If we go ahead 100 million years, we'll see the appearance of another group which has become ubiquitous with prehistory, the Ammonoids and Nautiloids. The Ammonoids are shelled cephalopods originating about 419 million years ago during the Devonian period and went out with the dinosaurs. They left their distant cousins, the Nautiloids, as the only living, permanently shelled cephalopod. The Pokemon Omanyte and Omastar are obviously based off these organisms. In an attempt to make these designs into a realistic animal, many artists have depicted them as either ammonoids, nautiloids, or a mix of the two. The main differences are subtle. Shelled cephalopods have a structure called a siphuncle, which is a long, fleshy tube connecting all separate chambers together and to the head. This tube uses passive osmosis to move water out of the chambers as the shell grows. When water is moved out of the chamber, air is left, which regulates the flotation of the shell. Ammonoids can be distinguished from nautiloids from the placement of their siphuncle tube. It runs along the margin of the shell. Nautiloids, on the other hand, have a siphuncle tube which runs through the middle of the shell. Another way to tell the difference is with sutures. Sutures are the lines you see when looking at one of these shells from the side. They are the margins of the shell's chambers, which would have had another shell covering the outside of the chamber when the animal was alive. Some fossils preserve this outer shell. Anyway, nautiloids have simple sutures like this. Ammonoids have crazy sutures, which can be a greater than less than sign, tooth-like, or totally bonker fractals. Since Omanyte and Omastar are alive, I can't exactly tell which cephalopod they are. Tirtouga and Carracosta, Archelon. If you find the cover fossil, what appears to be a turtle shell, you'll be able to resurrect Tirtouga and Carracosta. They superficially resemble the endangered leatherback turtle because these Pokemon are based on a distant fossil relative to the modern Titanic testudine, Archelon. This late Cretaceous turtle was the largest ocean-going turtle and one of the largest turtles which ever lived, being outshone just a tad by the freshwater, side-neck relative Stupendimes. The bones which made up Archelon's shell were quite light and open, similar to the shell bones of the leatherback. This implies Archelon and its slightly smaller cousin Protostega had much more leathery shells. Cranidos and Rampardos, Pachycephalosaurus. Shieldon and Bastidon, Chasmosaurines. Fossil Pokemon have been in the game since the beginning, but dinosaur fossil Pokemon weren't added into the game for a whole decade. 2006 saw the introduction of the Marginocephalians, Cranidos and Rampardos, and Shieldon and Bastidon. The inspiration for these Pokemon are quite obvious. Cranidos and its evolution Rampardos are based on Pachycephalosaurs, specifically Pachycephalosaurus itself. The long spikes sticking out of the back of its domed skull suggest Game Freak may have taken some inspiration from the controversial Stygimoloch, which may or may not be a subadult Pachycephalosaurus. The fathead with a bald spot is given exceptionally high attack and headbutting tendencies, in reference to the idea that they used their domed heads for courtship battles. They can be revived from skull fossils. In contrast, Shieldon and Bastidon are representative of the other side of the marginocephalian tree, the Ceratopsians. These Pokemon are revived by the armor fossil and host a defensive playstyle. Shieldon is likely to simply represent a young Ceratopsian, but if I wanted to be a pedantic nerd, I'd say it looks more like Protoceratops or something similar like Leptoceratops. Bastidon is much more unclear. The shield is square, so I'd think it'd be more like a Chasmosaur, the group which includes Triceratops, Pentaceratops, and Utaceratops. Artist R.J. Palmer, well known for his realistic speculative zoology takes on Pokemon, gave Bastidon characteristics of both Chasmosaurs and Centrosaurs. Chasmosaurs were the horned dinosaurs with large, windowed frills and crazy brow horns, while the Centrosaurs had enormous noses and crazy nose and frill horns. Tyrunt and Tyrantrum, Tyrannosaurus. Amaura and Aurorus, Amargasaurus. I think how long it took to get dinosaurs into the game reflects a lack of bias overseas. Instead of jumping straight to the most recognizable extinct organisms, Game Freak went for more alien and interesting critters from the fossil record to draw inspiration. Eventually though, the American market was too much, and dinosaurs entered the lexicon. Even then, the most well-known and internationally recognizable of the saurians was yet to come. It wasn't until Gen 6 in 2013 that the Tyrant Lizard Queen made her mark on Pokemon history. 2013 saw the introduction of the Sauriskians, the two-legged meat-eaters, and four-legged longnecks. In the theropod corner, revived from a jaw fossil, is Tyrunt and Tyrantrum. Even given the premise of using the most overused dinosaur known to pop culture, the designers went to work twisting the anatomy of Tyrannosaurus to their artistic content. These Tyrannosaurs are decked out in feathery collars and keratinous mouth covers. The evolution Tyrantrum gets a crest of rugose spikes and a feathery beard. Though this doesn't reflect what we know of their fossil inspirations, this is a cartoony stylized game, so step off. In the sauropod corner are Amaura and Aurorus, revived from a sail fossil. Again, instead of picking a taxon which might not translate as excitingly into Pokemon, like Brachiosaurus or Apatosaurus, the designers went with a lesser-known South American taxon, Amargasaurus. Amargasaurus is known for a double row of long, backward-pointing spines, which were at one point hypothesized to hold up a leathery sail for display. Though this hypothesis has been criticized and generally rejected in recent years, Amaura and Aurorus don't care and flaunt an Aurora-themed pair of fleshy sails on their necks. Archen and Archeops, Archaeopteryx. I guess you could say I was wrong in saying Game Freak didn't add dinosaurs till 2006. If you find a plume fossil in Gen 5, you'll be able to revive Archen and Archeops. Judging by the name and their appearance, I think it's safe to assume they were based off Archaeopteryx. This theropod was the first incidence of feathers in the fossil record known to science. It was also used as an example of a transitional form between dinosaurs and birds, as far back as the inception of paleontology and the theory of evolution. A completely feathered, flighted theropod dinosaur, along the lineage which would eventually produce birds, Archaeopteryx contains many characteristics shared by non-avian dinosaurs and the avian ones. A bony tail, teeth, and fingers like a theropod, an enlarged cranium, asymmetrical flight feathers, wishbone, and grasping feet like a bird. Eventually, the characteristics separating birds and dinosaurs, and therefore where Archaeopteryx sat on the Tree of Life, became so muddied scientists could no longer reconcile birds as separate from dinosaurs. Thanks, Archeops, very cool. Aerodactyl, pterosaurs. Among the original fossil Pokemon, there was an amber fossil. If you revived it, you'd get Aerodactyl. Very clearly based off a pterosaur, there's also a bunch of non-pterosaur features which make a taxon-specific identification kind of tricky. Aerodactyl offers up a switcheroo. Whereas all previous fossil Pokemon I've talked about are based on a real-world fossil species, Aerodactyl became the inspiration for a real-life fossil. Paleontologist with the University of Portsmouth, Stephen Vidovic, was sorting through a drawer full of pterosaur fossils. All of them were assigned to the genus Pterodactylus, as this was a wastebasket name given to nearly all pterosaur fossils found in the UK from the 1700s to the 1900s. Vidovic found 6 of the fossils he was analyzing to be unique enough to warrant a new name. In honor of Pokemon, he named the new flying reptile Aerodactylus. Despite both of them looking nothing alike, the name was given in order to create more engagement with the public, to spark a new generation of scientists through the vehicle of pop culture. Bulbasaur, a Dicynodont? Bulbasaur, a weird hybrid of toad, mammal, and onion-like properties, is obviously one of the 4 most recognizable Pokemon, as it was one of the original starters and is number 001 after all. Aerodactyl wasn't the only switcheroo from pop culture to science. Since Bulbasaur is not based on any one specific real-world animal, it became the inspiration in the naming of an extinct animal that looked vaguely similar, Bulbasaurus. Bulbasaurus is a Dicynodont, a group of rather adorable, short-faced, toothless, beaked herbivores from the Permian and Triassic periods. The descriptors have gone on the record stating their naming convention was not influenced at all from Pokemon. They're just being cheeky. The species name, Phylloxeron, translates to leaf razor. Razor Leaf is the name of a move Bulbasaur can learn in the game. The descriptors have also gone on the record saying similarity in names may not be entirely coincidental. Relicanth, Coelacanth. Relicanth is a non-fossil Pokemon based on both a living and fossil animal. Coelacanths are a group of fish called lobe-finned fishes, scientifically Sarcopterygians. They appeared during the Devonian period, with many different groups adapting to many different environments: deep ocean, reefs, estuaries, and freshwater rivers and lakes. Some of these groups developed more powerful fins to allow them to maneuver through murky water choked with debris. This eventually led to the development of air-breathing lungs and even more powerful limbs. These were forms like Tiktaalik and Eusthenopteron. Forms such as these gave rise to more advanced organisms which could breathe air partially or completely, and used powerfully muscled limbs to haul their bodies onto land. We are very distant relatives to these lobe-finned fishes. Coelacanths were a group with a torpedo-shaped, scale-covered body and 7 fins. They thrived from the Devonian to the Cretaceous period, and were once thought completely extinct without fossils after the Cretaceous period. Then a living one popped up in Indonesia. Relicanth is more properly based on the living coelacanth, Latimeria. The biology given to Relicanth in the world of Pokemon is a little weird, but so is Pokemon. Gen 8 Mixers. Who knows? The most recent fossil Pokemon debuted in Gen 8's Pokemon Sword and Shield. Game Freak again did something different. Instead of offering just new fossil Pokemon, 4 new fossils have been added. Fossilized bird, fish, drake, and dino. Each fossil only revives half of a Pokemon. You have to have at least 2 to mix and match tops and bottoms, resulting in chimeric abominations, which give off some strong "kill me" vibes. The bird fossil results in the top half of an electric-type Dromaeosaur lookalike. I give further props for the designers gave the critters stylized feathers. The drake fossil results in the rump of some kind of stegosaur-looking thing. There's no Thagomizer tail spikes, so I guess it could be a Scelidosaur of some kind. The fish fossil results in the front half of a fishy creature, resembling everyone's favorite Uncle Dunkle. The pruning shear-like jaws give away its inspiration as the placoderm Dunkleosteus. Lastly, the dino fossil revives the back end of some marine animal. A few artists have given the rest of the animal a try, with plesiosaur, pliosaur, or ichthyosaur-based interpretations, so I'll go with it's a marine reptile. Each combination looks cartoonishly awkward, as it should, with each part being ridiculously disproportionate from one another. As with many other pop culture phenomena, the inclusion of real-world elements, twisted through the lens of sci-fi and fantasy, has inspired entire generations of explorers and scientists. With new installments every couple of years, Pokemon continues to channel the desires of youngins and nostalgia-fueled adults to collect and fight creatures in a fictional world, while learning tidbits about real-world animals, whether they be alive or dead. Subscribe to consume some delicious contento, gore the like button, scratch out a comment, and jostle the notification bell just so you're in the know with everything Edge. Thanks for watching. A very special thanks to my patrons, Dinosaur, Natty Cat, Ed Pretz, Steve Bradshaw, and Dana Manchester. If you'd like to support my channel and receive some extra content, pledge to my patron at any tier you want.
Next level.